What if hip-hop never existed? Question. Do you think there'd be as many heads screaming out, stop snitching? I wonder. What if Adam and Eve ain't eat the fruit? You think we'd be able to see the truth? Or what if Albert Einstein ain't think of the nuke? Or Smith & Wesson ain't teach us to shoot? You think there'd be as many plays out there if there was no booth? Matter of fact, what if white man hung off a noose? Would it still be cool to say nigga? Or maybe we would make sick figures? Or would we wanna be crackers? And all the whites would be rappers? What if Martin Luther King survived? You think the New Orleans flood would've caused him to drop and die? I wonder what if and see what is. Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life was an art you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life was an art you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? If Christopher Wallace never got murked, how much money would Sean Carter be worth? What if Tupac never got hit with the flame? Would the game still have change filled with these lames? What if Jabari wasn't speeding down the street? What if the bullet Malcolm sent never hit Zeke? A black guy dropped off at a house instead of a stop? Or Ali never got bobbed by the cops? What if the little homie EZ didn't die? Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life was an art you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life was an art you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? I don't know. What if? What if? What if? What if hip-hop never existed? Question. Do you think there'd be as many heads screaming out, stop snitching? Wonder. What if Adam and Eve ain't eat the fruit? You think we'd be able to see the truth? Or what if Albert Einstein ain't think of the nuke? Or Smith & Wesson ain't teach us to shoot? You think there'd be as many plays out there if there was no booth? Matter of fact, what if white man hung off a noose? Would it still be cool to say nigga? Or maybe we would make sick figures? Or would we wanna be crackers? And all the whites would be rappers? What if Martin Luther King survived? You think the New Orleans flood would've caused him to drop and die? I wonder what if and see what is. Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life was an art you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life was an art you thought?
Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. Welcome to the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Today there is a full presentation of the program we have for you. We will take a look at War on Blacks, in which we debate criminals with badges. First, a word of caution. The fourth branch programs are not made for individuals who are looking for ways to feel good about someone else talking about something else, but rather the ultimate objective is to perfect the union. As such, we ought to remove ignorance as part of the equation. And the topic today is a very controversial topic. However, in general, this is a problem in the country, and for minority blacks in particular, this is a serious problem. As such, as you heard in the announcement, the goal is not to have numbers, but rather individuals who are interested in helping solve those social issues in the country. In other words, we're not expecting everyone to go along. We're not expecting everyone to be pleased, nor are we expecting a crowd of people to join in. We started this program, the fourth branch program, on a principle of a very famous and important man, George Washington, who said, "It is far better to be alone than to be in bad company." So we know when we started this program, it would be a very stiff road, a very stiff mountain to climb. But we know it is worth it, because the point of it is to leave a country which is better for future generations. And one of the problems that, well, the country is confronting today is racism, but more specifically, blacks are being executed by the very individuals whose primary job is to protect them. Also, another warning, some of the videos we will show you in this program are disturbing. Might get you angry, frustrated, irritated, and might even get you to question the very idea of justice in America. Nothing new to black community, but nevertheless. So if you are an individual who is concerned about the state of race in the country, the race relation, and if you are concerned about the state of affairs between cops on the street, the Department of Justice, and blacks, this program is not a one-time program. It is a series that we started a while back when we began to debate slavery in America. And today marks the first day we will continue the program after we took a break from it in order to attend to the 2020 race and discuss all the candidates in the race. From this point forward, these series, Criminals with Badges or War on Blacks, will once again become an integral part of this program, the Fourth Branch program. Today, as I mentioned earlier, we will present you a few examples, 3 to be exact. We research not because they're the most egregious example, but rather to make a very important point about the state of affairs between cops, law enforcement, and blacks. And as usual, we do not just talk about an issue for the sake of talking about the issue. We also suggest solution as we go along debating this very plague in our country. We will continue to point out those we call criminals with badges. And of course, we will talk about example of models law enforcement officers who take their job seriously and understand that the job is not to kill the civilian, but to protect them. That's where we will start today, in just a moment. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. We begin by the reading of an article which was posted. It says the title, "Law Enforcement Officers Are Criminals with Badges," and it's legal in the United States. It is beyond embarrassment when news of law enforcement officers gunning down an unarmed civilian comes to the wire. It is a tragedy that should have been just an accident, and yet it is a situation that repeated over and over and over across the country. Law enforcement officers are turning into criminals with a badge, thus a license to kill, without any accountability and with impunity. And it gets worse. Their partners usually turn a blind eye and even lie for them at times. The precinct they belong to stand by them, thus providing legitimacy to heinous crimes and making it legitimate for other law enforcement officers to continue on the same path. That is unacceptable in a civilized society. There should be zero excuse for any law enforcement officer to shoot an unarmed civilian. The mistake argument should be completely ruled out. We expect a trained law enforcement officer to exercise restraint even in the face of danger. There should be no ambiguity as to when a law enforcement officer is allowed to draw his weapon under one and only one circumstance: if the assailant has his weapon drawn and shooting or attempting to shoot, and the law enforcement officer cannot safely take cover. There should be no other circumstance under which a law enforcement officer is given a pass for shooting an unarmed civilian. We cannot continue to make excuses for law enforcement officers when they commit the murderous crime of gunning down unarmed civilians. More often than not, the first reaction when responding to an incident is to reach for their gun. That is unacceptable in a civilized society. While one suggests that a law enforcement officer put his life in jeopardy, neither can we go along with the rationale that he makes a mistake by gunning down unarmed civilian. That is unacceptable in a civilized society. The primary duty of a law enforcement officer is to protect the citizens of the community. Everyone in the community should feel comfortable seeing, interacting with law enforcement officers. Just the opposite is true today, almost everywhere. There is a palpable distrust and disdain for law enforcement officers, especially in the black community, and it is justified most of the time. The trigger-happy law enforcement officer should be taken off the street, retrained, reassigned, or relieved of their duty. For anything less is unacceptable in a civilized society. We'll be right back. Harry Belafonte said, when a black voice is raised in protest to oppression, those who are comfortable with our oppression are the first to criticize us for daring to speak out against it. I'll say it again. When a black voice is raised in protest to oppression, those who are comfortable with our oppression are the first to criticize us for daring to speak out against it. A specific predicament, we seen every time there is a tragedy in which a black is fallen victim in the hands of a police officer. It's always the black to blame. It's always the victim to blame. As we continue, we will show you proof. We will show you evidence as to why our society needs to address this issue. Not when it happened, not every time it happened, but to address the issue once and for all. Because law enforcement officers are nothing today, most of them are nothing none other but criminals carrying badges. The time when we used to say it's just a few bad apples has been over a long time ago. Today, we ought to acknowledge that the whole basket is rotten, and it is time that we as a society demand that elected officials pass legislation which protect the citizen of the country against the action of those individuals whose primary job is to protect, but rather use that to kill. We will begin today by showing you, starting with Eric Garner. Now, we decided to bring Eric Garner back into the conversation because, well, the past few days, the story has been brought back to the surface, and there is a reason for that. We will address that later in this program. Here is the video of Eric Garner, who was being choked out of his life by Daniel Pantaleo.
Put your hand behind
That was how 43-year-old New Yorker Eric Garner died.
I'm going to show you the beginning of this video again. Now, this is not the only video we will see in this program, but I want to show you 3 separate videos from 3 different states, and we will talk about the plague in the country, about the individual we call law enforcement officer. Now, you may have not paid attention to the video, but let me give you the gist of it. Eric Garner was selling loose cigarette on the street. Of course, it's considered illegal in the state of New York, but this is the reason Eric Garner is going to lose his life in the hands. If you were watching closely, there were 4 police officers, one choking him, that Daniel Pantaleo, that guy. He is Eric Garner killer. He was the one choking Eric Garner and 3 other officers on the scene. Now, you may have not heard it because part of the video is missing, that Eric Garner keeps saying, I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe, I cannot breathe. And Daniel Pantaleo, after, while he's choking him, another officer was squeezing his head against the pavement. Yes, his crime was selling loose cigarette. And that's why law enforcement officer would take his life away from his 6 children. Let's take a look at that again. One is choking him and now press his head against the pavement. And as you can see, his foot is also on his back. Now, those are the kind of things that people who are called law enforcement officer. The guy doesn't have a gun. Yes, he's selling cigarette. Obviously, that means he's trying to make a living. This is not to condone the fact that, well, selling cigarette in New York is illegitimate, is illegal. But you have 4 police officers on the scene killing an individual for selling loose cigarette. And if you think about that clearly, this is what here in our justice system we are okay with. Law enforcement, who's supposed to have good sense, they are the one killing civilian. Now I'm going to show you another video. That video I just showed you is the killing of Eric Garner. Of course, Daniel Pantaleo was the ringleader. He is the one who actually choked Eric Garner to death. But we will come back to talk about not just about the death, but the plague in our society of cops killing civilians, blacks in particular, and getting away with it. The next video is going to show you, I'm going to show you, is happened in Chicago. And it is the video of Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by Jason Van Dyke. Let's take a look at that. This is the guy, Jason Van Dyke. Once again, you just watch a video of police officer whose primary job is to protect, and what do? They kill the very civilian they're trying to protect. That happened in Chicago in 2014. The last video I'm going to show you happened in South Carolina, and it was the officer called Michael Schlegel. Michael Schlegel is the gentleman who killed Walter Scott in South Carolina. Here's the video. A civilian, Walter Scott, was driving a car and he was stopped because his tail light wasn't working. And as soon as he stopped the car, he tried to run away from the cop. Yes, those are the individuals we call their family think they're good people. They go home, they talk, they eat with their family, they eat with their children, but yet on the streets, those people are nothing other than criminals with badges. But that's not really the reason that I brought the story here. Because we already know that here in America, law enforcement are just, most of them anyway, are criminals with badges. There is no other way of explaining that. What the three examples I just gave you are not isolated cases in America. I use them, Eric Garner, most especially to make a point about the fact that it is happening across the nation. This is New York, this is Chicago, this is South Carolina. Now, as we were preparing for this program, in California, there were 2 other cases of unarmed blacks gunned down by police officer. In Texas, a pregnant woman was shot 5 times, close range, by a Texan cop. Those are not isolated cases in America. Those are criminals that our system provide with a gun and a license to kill, and there is a reason that it keeps happening over and over and over. This guy name is on the floor, on the ground, is called Alton Sterling, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You see where he's laying down? With 2 cuffs on him, he will not get off the ground. He will be shot right there. But the worst part of it is, well, we'll talk about the worst part of it. This is the state of affairs in America. For citizens in general, but blacks in particular, that they are dealing exclusively with criminals who have the license to kill. And we say criminals with badges is because the action that I just showed you, no matter where you stand, no matter how illogical your mind may be, you could not possibly have looked at any of those videos and tell me those individuals are there to protect the citizen of the country. You're gonna see a replay of Jason Van Dyke, a police officer who an individual running away from stopped his car, and the minute that he stopped the car, he did not even manage to do anything except he pulled his gun and he shot the guy. Those are people who are on the force to serve and protect. He is Michael Schlager. You tell me, those, as Larry Belafonte says, when a black voice is raised in protest against oppression, those who are comfortable with our oppression are the first to criticize us for daring to speak out against it. America is completely biased against blacks. And I'm going to show you those videos that I just presented to you. It's just a background for the important part of the story. This is not the story. This is just so that you can have an understanding of how screwed up our system is how biased our system is, and how important it is for anyone in America, black or white, if you are anywhere concerned about the state of affairs in the country, in the justice system, with the police on the street, then you cannot just stay silent and shrug it off. Because those individuals carrying a badge and a gun, most of them are nothing other than criminals with badges. And we ought to call them by that name because that's exactly what they are. It is so bad in America that when a police officer does something that's within the norm of the job, they call him a hero. Anything a police officer does nowadays that falls within the boundaries of his job, that police officer is hailed as a hero. And the reason is because we recognize, even intuitively, even for people who are not saying it, but intuitively we recognize that police officers have been doing wrong to the citizen of the country. So that's why any small thing that they do, we say, yay, this is a hero. But we're going to show you shortly that the problem is much, much, much worse than what you just saw. And the blacks are suffering the brunt of it. You are on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is trifold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. course, it is easy to point fingers because whenever a situation as those that I just provided come up, we are angry, we are outraged, and of course we point fingers to the cop who perpetrate the crime. Now this is not to condone the action of the cops, because obviously if we put on the street individuals who are supposed to protect the civilian, then it is unacceptable for any system at all, to accept that those same individuals are the one committing those crimes, and for that to continue across the nation. The article I read earlier, it sounds like an article that was written or published recently. But that article was written in 2013, 6 years ago, when the article was written to condemn the action, the murderous action, the heinous crime that police officers on the street have perpetrated. 6 years ago, 6 years later, it is no better. Again, as I said, it is easy for us to point fingers to the officers. But let's take a look at something that should give us pause and help us understand really the origin of the problem. Let's take a look at this guy, Jason Van Dyke. Jason Van Dyke is the guy who shot and killed Laquan McDonald. That's the gentleman you saw on the video that was on the street when the police car pulled and he was moving away from the police car, and the police, Jason Van Dyke, that guy, got out of the car and simply opened fire. Here it is again, because I want the point that I'm about to make for you to understand the problem is not just the police officer. Here it is again. That guy, it took a year before the world, before Laquan family found out that he was the killer. What happened? According to the Chicago Police Department, there was nothing wrong because Jason Van Dyke really acted in self-defense. Yes, you heard correctly. Jason Van Dyke acted in self-defense. The video you just saw. Despite the fact there were other officers there, actually two cars. The guy driving the car that pulled in front of Laquan McDonald was there and corroborated the story. And the other car that you saw, the other officer car that you saw that Laquan McDonald just passed by, was there also and witnessed the whole thing. They corroborated the story that, well, it was self-defense. And the worst part is, the internal investigation cleared Jason Van Dyke because he was in his right to kill. Now, the only reason we found about that video is because of a very zealous journalist by the name of Brandon Smith, who requested the video of that shooting. And for a whole year, the Chicago Police Department was unwilling to give the video. So he filed a lawsuit in the court, and the court forced the police department to release the video. The very first day after the video was released, Jason Van Dyke was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Now, I want you to understand the severity of the problem. So it's not just Jason Van Dyke, because you may be inclined to say that guy is a criminal, but he's not alone. The whole police department, the guy that was with him, the other car, the mayors, yes, the mayors was also involved. Rem Emanuel, if you recall, was also involved. They all saw the video. The prosecutor saw the video. So when we talk about a system that's corrupt, that's biased, that's having a war against blacks, we're not just talking gibberish. Here's a situation very clearly. Now, if you don't see the video, you can take the officer's words and say, okay, maybe the officer was right. Oh, by the way, that's another aspect of any time a police officer commits a murder. You can rest assured that whatever account they give you of the murder is false. You can take that to the bank. They never say anything that actually happened the way it happened. So Jason Van Dyke and Conrad and colleague and everybody involved corroborated the story that Laquan McDonald was threatening Jason Van Dyke. That's why he had to be shot 16 times. Yes, the problem is not just the criminals with badges on the street. The problem is the whole system of law enforcement. The whole system of criminal justice is corrupt in waging a war against blacks. That video that you just saw, where all the officers involved say that's the way that Jason Van Dyke mentioned it, that's exactly how it happened. The mayor saw it, the prosecutor saw it, the eyewitnesses to McDonald murder, all of them lied. Had it not been for Brendan Smith, a journalist who wanted to find out exactly what happened, today Jason Laquan McDonald would have been just, well, he would have been just another black murdered by another criminal with badges. But that's not even the worst of it. You think all that I just said was bad? Well, Jason Van Dyke only get 81 months in jail, less than 7 years, for deliberately murdering a civilian. 7 years. Why wouldn't they continue to go out on the street and killing blacks? Yes, the system is corrupt and waging a war against blacks. Example number 1. Now I'm going to give you example number 2. That happened, what I just showed you happened in Chicago. Now the picture I showed you earlier, this picture, the 2 officers involved in the shooting of Alton Sterling, as you can see even at the bottom of your screen, there was no charge filed against those guys. No charge. Because, well, they killed a black man. Guess what Alton Sterling was doing that was so egregious as crime? He was selling bootleg video. Eric Garner, who was choked to death, was selling loose cigarette. Alton Sterling was selling, well, bootleg video. Those individuals, they're criminals, they deserve to be killed, they deserve to be murdered. That's what the law enforcement, that's what our justice system is saying. Yes, those people, they are criminals with badges. There is no other way of referring to those people. Now let me show you another example of how corrupt, how biased, how much of a war that the law enforcement and the criminal justice system are waging against blacks. That happened in South Carolina with Officer Michael Slager deliberately murdering a black civilian. Here it is again. And yes, that's what police officers are. We used to say it's a few bad apples. Those apples are not just rotten, but they are plague to society. Now, what I just showed you, that's the guy, Michael Slager. What you're currently looking at is his posture in court. He was trying to explain why he had to shoot Walter Scott. Now, if you think the egregious murder of Walter Scott was the worst that could happen, after Michael Slager murdered, executed Walter Scott, 1 year later, there was a hung jury. Now, the part of the story that I failed to mention is the following. After Michael Slager executed Walter Scott, you can hear him in the video saying, "Put your hands behind your back! Put your hands behind your back!" And every time, and the reason that he was yelling and screaming that way is so that people around can think that, well, nothing happened. And also in the video, they show you another officer, his partner, trying to put evidence, a gun, nearby Walter Scott so that they could say that Michael Slager had every right to shoot Walter Scott. As I mentioned earlier, whenever you hear a police officer shooting a black individual, you can take it to the bank, whatever story you hear from that officer and a colleague is fabrication, lies. If that video that I just showed you was not available, that's the story that they told before the video showed up, that Walter Scott may have been armed. Those are the criminals with badges we have in our society. But the problem is not just them. The problem is the fact that our society is condoning the action. Here's a guy I just showed you. Here it is again. Let's take another look. Here's a guy that murdered, executed a civilian. How do you get a hung jury which means it doesn't even matter. Remember when they were promoting the idea of all police officers carrying body camera so that they can see what they're doing? What's the point of carrying body camera when you clearly see that that officer murdered a civilian and you get a hung jury? How do you get a hung jury? Which means our society condones the action of those criminals with badges. That's why they continue to do it over and over and over again. How do you get to the point of saying, we don't know, we're not sure? How can anyone watch that video and come, we're not sure, maybe his life was in danger? I'll show the video to you. Rotor head trying to run away. He didn't have a weapon in him. He was just running away. How do you get in a society, in a civilized society? We're not talking something that happened during slavery here. We're not talking something that happened during the 1960s. That particular scenario that I just showed you happened in 2015. How do you get a hung jury watching that video? It's because our society, when we talk about criminals, we're not just talking about those officers who are on the street and acting like criminals who have the license to kill, but we're also talking about a society who condones those actions, thus giving them the license to continue to do those kind of wrongdoing. That is the most egregious murder by a police officer, and yet for 12 people to sit there and say, hey, we cannot tell, we're not sure. Yes, our society is a complicit on this problem that we have. So it's not just those criminals with badges that we have a problem with. In the case of Eric Garner, that guy, you may recall him. Now, let me tell you the current predicament. Now, as it stands today, he's still on the street. Hasn't even been charged. Well, actually, he has been charged because he's going to court now. After that guy choked Eric Garner to death, this is Eric Garner. After Daniel Pantaleo choked Eric Garner to death, here is an excerpt of an exchange between the lieutenant supervisor. Here's an exchange between Lieutenant Christopher Bannon and Sergeant Danon Samenot. That's minutes, moments. It could be a few minutes, I don't know for certain, but moments after that guy choked Eric Garner to death. And he was alerted of the issue, and here's what he texted back. Not a big deal. We were just effecting a lawful arrest. Yes, the people who commit those crimes, they are no doubt, criminals with badges, but it's the whole system, law enforcement, that is corrupt. He's someone that just choked an individual to death for selling loose cigarette, and the reaction in the precinct, his supervisor leave a lot to be desired about law enforcement. Oh, not a big deal. That's what we have here in America. There is a war being waged against blacks. And the police officers, most of them are criminals with badges. There are tools being used to perfect that war. So when people are asking, which war on blacks? It's either they lying to themselves, or they simply living, or couldn't care less. Every encounter with a police officer by a black man is a very dangerous encounter. And the reason is not just because the police officer could be a criminal with a badge, but because the system make it easy for that police officer. If he is not, when he joins the crew, he becomes a criminal with a badge. Because the system makes it easy for that police officer to be nothing other than a criminal with a badge. That guy, Daniel Pantaleo, choked Eric Garner to death. And his colleague, his supervisor, hey, no big deal. Of course, they're trying to explain it later that I was just trying to understand the situation. I was trying to calm down Daniel Pantaleo. I didn't know how to best explain. Now, you have four officers, and the guy is yelling, I can't breathe. Not a single one of them has the any ethic, any level of morality to say, stop! Not a single one of them. And those are the people who are supposed to protect and to serve. And this is a predicament that's happening across the nation. Those are not isolated cases. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is trifold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives, then and only then will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. Most police officers are criminals with badges. As such, they are usually not held responsible for the murders they've committed. For individuals in the minority group in particular, police officers have license to kill with impunity. In the United States, human lives in general, black lives in particular, are of no importance. Those are not mere words of some angry black man. Consider, for instance, the text message sent by an NYPD supervisor immediately following Eric Garner's killing by one of his officers, as reported in the Daily News, as follows. Not a big deal. We were effecting a lawful arrest. The exchange between the two officers who were at the scene, there were at least 4 other officers who witnessed and heard Eric Garner saying over and over and over, "I can't breathe." A situation which leaves a lot to be desired of those who are supposed to serve and to protect. Human lives have no value in the United States of America. The very individuals who are tasked to protect them are the main culprits of crimes in the country. Consider the following. In London, UK, in 2017, just 2017, the whole year, just 8 individuals were killed by law enforcement. And if we dare to subtract 7 of those 8, which is a number of those who were involved in terrorism, there was just one single individual who fell victim of law enforcement in London, a city which is pretty similar in demographics to New York City and most major US cities in America. Here in the United States, there were 1,700. You heard correctly, 1,700, over 1,000 men and just under 600 women that were killed by cops in the country. In London, 1. In US, 1,700, 1,700. Yes, lives, human lives in America are of no value. The system of policing in America is corrupt in most cities. The police officers, they are liars. So are their superiors. including sometimes even the chief of police, the mayors, as it was in the case of Laquan McDonald in Chicago. Let's consider the three cases we looked at in this segment. After Eric Garner was choked out of his life and left behind 6 children, the lying machine around the circumstance of his death was in full motion. It was all the victim's fault. Of course, Eric Garner lost his life because he was accused of selling, loose cigarette, a crime so egregious that it looks like the police department, the Justice Department, find it justified. For 5 years, that was the premise under which Daniel Pantaleo, his officers, his supervisors, they all operated under that premise. Killing a black man is no big deal. Even an initial internal investigation found Pantaleo did nothing wrong. How could he? He killed a black man. It's no big deal. And he's still free, roaming the street of New York looking for his next victim. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in March of 2018, Alton Sterling lost his life for committing the egregious act of selling homemade CD video. Cops found him too dangerous to be on the street. And the federal investigators said, hey, it's a black man. He got killed doing something illegal. In South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, April 2015, Michael Slager murdered Walter Scott. His egregious crime was he was driving a car with non-functioning brake light. On December 2017, a hung jury left Walter Scott family devastated. And the message was clear to police officers: there is no punishment for killing blacks. In Chicago, October 2014, Jason Van Dyke murdered Laquan McDonald by shooting him 16 times. Other officers were also eyewitnesses of the murder. Internal investigation cleared Van Dyke. It was not until Brendan Smith, a journalist, filed for the Chicago Police Department to release the video under the Freedom Information Act, FOIA, that Van Dyke was charged with first-degree murder. In other words, police officers, witnesses, mayors, chief of police, prosecutors, they all were in on hiding first-degree murder. As it should be obvious by now, criminals with badges are tools used by society, by our society, to wage war on blacks. A war which began many centuries ago with the white society using blacks, slaves, as tools to enrich themselves. When Abraham Lincoln passed the Emancipation Act in 1865, the whites wouldn't have it. They immediately sprung to action. They've been setting barriers, obstacles, pass laws, legislation which are overwhelmingly disadvantageous towards blacks, and all the while blaming them for being lazy. Their memory of blacks spending 18 hours on the field working under scorching sun or shivering winter must be pretty fuzzy. Whites have put in place all sort of guardrail to prevent blacks from making any progress. And despite, of course, the progress against all odds that many blacks have achieved, legislators, overwhelmingly Republican legislators, continue to pass legislations, policies, and place in the courtroom judges who are racist, bigot, judges who would see to it that blacks continue to suffer in the hands of the justice system, or injustice for those who are blacks. The police officers who are turned criminals with badges are the product of a society who has continued to shrug off the murder of any black individual. It is very rare for a police officer to be held accountable for murdering a black individual. According to stats, 97% of those officers do not even lose their job, let alone. Even in the case of blatant proof, such was with Michael Slager killing Walter Scott, a hung jury was a typical story of how blacks are treated in America. And there is no end in sight, as more and more corrupt and immoral chief of police, mayors, prosecutors, and yes, judges continue to see the victim as deserving their fate. Every time a black individual is murdered, the racists always rush to find out what could possibly be wrong with this individual, what's wrong in his past life, so that they can make an argument that his murder was justified. Such was the case, for instance, of Trayvon Martin, when a journalist in Florida rushed to find out, well, Trayvon Martin is no saint, so his death was justified. In America, it is almost certain the murder of blacks by law enforcement would go unpunished. Jason Van Dyke got just 7 years for murdering Laquan McDonald by shooting him 16 times. That's the case I mentioned to you, that mayors, chief of police, prosecutors, eyewitnesses, they all lied about the fact that Laquan McDonald was a threat to Jason Van Dyke. Michael Slager got it a little worse than Jason. He got 20 years for murdering Walter Scott, well, executing Walter Scott. Darren Wilson, the officer who shot and killed Michael Brown in Missouri on August of 2014, was not even charged. Blaine Salomani, who shot and killed Alton Sterling and Harry Lake, were not charged. Why should they? They kill a black individual. There is always a rationale for killing black individuals in America. As such, police officers are nothing other than criminals with badges roaming the street of America seeking for their next victim. All of those individuals that I just mentioned, all of those individuals I just presented in this segment, they were all unarmed civilians, all executed by criminals with badges in America. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. If you have an instance of a criminal with badge, any particular story, personal or otherwise, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to hear about it. This program, this serious criminal with badges, is here to stay. And we will continue to expose those criminal with badges here on this program. I hope you did get something out of this program, and I hope you join the movement to put an end to this problem, to this plague in America. Rid the street of those criminals with badges. In the meantime, I hope you have a good afternoon. Send us comment, criticism, suggestion. Let us know how we're doing, or tell us how we can improve this program. It's not going anywhere, so you might as well help improving it. Join me again next week, Monday, 10 a.m., in which we will continue our regular segment right here on the Fourth Branch, a place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again next week. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. See you soon. The Fourth Branch podcast
is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
What if hip-hop never existed? Question. Do you think there'd be as many heads screaming out, stop snitching? Wonder. What if Adam and Eve ain't eat the fruit? You think we'd be able to see the truth? Or what if Albert Einstein ain't think of the nuke? Or Smith & Wesson ain't teach us to shoot? You think there'd be as many plays out there if there was no boost? Matter of fact, what if white man hung off a noose? Would it still be cool to say nigga? Or maybe we would make sick figures? Or would we wanna be crackers? And all the whites would be rappers. What if Martin Luther King survived? You think the New Orleans flood would've caused him to drop and die? I wonder what if and see what is. Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? If Christopher Wallace never got murked, how much money would Sean Carter be worth? What if Tupac never got hit with the flame? Would the game still have change filled with these lames? What if Jabari wasn't speeding down the street? What if the bullet Malcolm sent never hit Zeke? A black guy dropped off at the house instead of a stop? Or Ali never got bopped by the cops? What if the little homie EZ didn't die? Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? I don't know. What if? What if? What if?
Oh yeah, yeah, baby, I need Rebecca. My God be my provider, He be my protector. So far they go higher. Yeah, baby, I need Rebecca. My God be my provider, He be my protector. So far they go higher. Oh yeah, me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. We nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. No be later. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. Yeah. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Yeah. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Even though I'm young for money, I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well.
You munyai. Would you make it come and once I see I record with a stolen mic? Ubi see my phone coming here can see and a two-man pie. Ubi banya moshe na mu destroy the soul inside. My baby I'm on a monkai.
Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What will they do be deja vu? Omunya and kefie dedu. Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What will they do be deja vu? Omunya and kefie dedu. Nanya me kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nanya me be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nanya me kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nanya me be kebi mama. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo body. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eba, eba. I still dey fight for the paper. Love me now, no be later. No be later. Eba, eba. I still dey fight for the paper. Love me now,